The area does have a future from the tourism point of view, but the water is one of its greatest assets, of far more value than the coal in the long term.
Mine sites can be remediated and should be remediated and rehabilitated properly. We are aware that there have been some problems in this area in the past. We believe that remediation in the difficult ones has been by and large successful.
The mining corporations claim that they can repair the damage to rivers via remediation techniques.
There have been a number of remediation techniques which have been attempted to reduce the damage from longwall mining to river systems. Those include grouting of cracks in riverbeds, also putting what are called vertical slots in some of the rock strata around riverbeds to reduce the stresses that are involved, and also environmental flow releases to make up for some of the lost flows as a result of bed cracking. Unfortunately, none of those techniques have yielded anything like the benefits that are required to restore a river to its proper natural functions. A classic example is Marnie's waterhole on the Georges River, where the vertical slot technique was attempted to prevent damage to that as a result of longwall mining activity, and unfortunately it wasn't as successful as one might have hoped. The water hole was still damaged and there was a loss of flows.
That's actually the hole they drilled and they plugged to seal the bottom of the bedrock.
Bottom of the bedrock.
So they, in theory, bring the water back to the top.
Which doesn't happen, of course.
It doesn't.
And in any case, filling riverbeds with grout or other types of compounds can hardly be seen to be a natural process, and it's really not helpful for aquatic ecosystems.
Did the BHP once. I said their remediation of the riverbed, what do they think? They sit on the right-hand side of God? I mean, you can't repair something that Mother Nature's taken years, billions of years to fix. I don't think you can repair a riverbed once it's cracked. But they think they can.
The only way to protect river ecosystems and the values of those areas is to manage things properly and prevent damage in the first place by not longwall mining under sensitive habitats.
What we've found generally, the information I have, is that some of this cracking is of a temporary nature in terms of loss of water, and that there's a self-healing process or self-remediating process. Where that hasn't occurred, for instance, along South Wambo Creek, the company carried out a $1.6 million remediation program, which I understand has been successful in addressing the particular problem.
The mining company has told the Minister that it's been successful. If you call success grass and trees, it is successful. And in effect what they're doing is actually burying our creek under a massive amount of sand, soil, silt and everything else. Well, where we're standing is actually in what used to be the backbone of the property. My grandfather bought it back around about 1923 for the fact that it did have a permanent stream. It's never let him down, never let anyone down, even right up to the point of mining. From there on in we've had a gradual demise of the creek. The mine was never allowed, according to consent conditions, to go anywhere near it, but they did.
The coal mine under Wambo Creek is just one of the 36 coal mines located in the Hunter region.
Well, when I first came to live in Singleton, which will be 50 years next year, it was a very lovely district with dairying along all the rivers and the creeks, and a community that pulled together. The mining industry came in a bang in the 70s, which was the beginning of the open cuts, and that was when the district started to be just blown apart. People were bought out, families were blown apart, the whole district was decimated with not just one mine, but there were so many different mines came into the area at the time.
There's a lot of mining in the Hunter Valley, and a lot of people who even live on the river, some of them work in coal mines. But there had never been any discussion of coal mining right in the reaches of the upper Hunter catchment until 2001, when we first heard that Bickham Coal Company were planning to put a big open cut right next to the Pages River.
Well, then about 25 years ago, a mine, longwall mine, under Bowman's Creek, and the owner of a property upstream of us discovered wonder in the creek when he went to cross it to find his cattle. Went walking upstream and found that the bottom had fallen out of the creek into the longwall.
The other thing I was concerned about, I said, you know, you're going to take all this water out. And they said, oh no, we might put water back. Now, 4 years ago, I didn't know what that meant. Putting water back, I remember thinking, oh, putting water back, but what quality water? So we don't want dirty, coal, saline, sulphurous water put back in our lovely, clean Pages River. And these are the sorts of things that I didn't know back in 2001 that I've and the community have had to learn about.
I could no longer utilise any of the alluvial soils on Long Bowman's Creek, and 2 mines upstream were allowed to discharge mine water 2 megalitres a day into the river, so that our irrigation water was so saline that some days we could never use it, and it reached a stage where we just couldn't stay there any longer.
When Bickham Coal Company first proposed to take out a bulk sample, the company that did their water assessment report said that they needed to pump out 250 megalitres, so 250 million litres of water when they extracted the coal, just for the bulk sample. Now this was when we were in drought, and we held a public meeting and said, you have to be kidding. You know, this is more water than the entire water allocation of Murrurundi. They were a bit surprised that the community was so outraged about it. And a few months later they came back and said, oh sorry, got the numbers wrong. It's only 16 million litres we need to take out. So it went from 250 megalitres to 16 megalitres. This was another example of very casual figures that are being presented to the community, and how it's always been up to us to ask the questions.
So we had to eventually sell. Now, what annoys me and other people is that no compensation was ever offered to anybody who lost their water or lost the quality of their water.
We've been forced to appreciate it more, and that will be a good thing. I think it's always difficult when you have commercial interests conflicting, and the fact is, I'd say, particularly here on the Pages River, if you look at the development potential and the water availability, it's not equal. And this is what we've got to work out as a community. This is a resource that is here for all of us, and not one industry has the right to dominate its use.
After seeing what has happened in the Hunter Valley over the last 20 years, it astounds me that it is continuing to happen all over New South Wales, and these new exploration areas are being allowed to go ahead without any thought to what could possibly happen to the water in all these areas.
And I think mining companies know that they can break conditions and nothing's going to happen. So forget it. I want to see Bickham coal mine stopped. I'm not interested in going into discussions about a million conditions, you know, living here with my fingers crossed. This is a coal mine at the head of the Hunter catchment, and it's not worth the risk.
Rivers SOS want the government to protect all rivers in New South Wales from the detrimental effects of mining. This can easily be achieved by legislating a minimum 1 kilometre safety zone around all rivers.
1 kilometre exclusion zone should be viewed as a sensible measure to prevent damage to these important habitats. They're a valuable community resource. There are significant costs to the community in terms of damage to these environments, and also in many cases Sydney's drinking water supply is being used to try and provide environmental flows to top up the lost water from these damaged rivers, so there are significant costs.
At 1 kilometre there is almost zero effect. We believe that rivers are too precious to play around with, and that they deserve exactly that.
keep a kilometre or a couple of kilometres back from the rivers, or, like I said, change the mining procedure so it doesn't cause this damage to the rivers.
You can never restore the river to its former glory via remediation techniques. They're really band-aid measures and are no substitute for avoiding damage in the first place.
Should there be a 1 kilometre safety zone around rivers in New South Wales?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable request. 1 kilometre's not very far.
There's a lot of coal in the area. Why would you want to enforce that upon an area that's going to be disturbed?
There must be other ways of doing it. Or just pray the cost of coal drops.
In 20 to 50 years' time, they won't want to burn coal because they'll have better fuel resources, and so they might as well sell the coal while they can.
We have to take a careful but rational and scientific approach to these issues, and not go and put in arbitrary 1 kilometre buffer zones around streams and creeks, which of course would reduce the resource dramatically.
Well, I just think that it's up to the people of Australia to say enough's enough. We must preserve what we have now and endeavour to fix the mess that the mining companies have made, and they must be made to do it.
Certainly the government gets huge revenue from these coal mines, and they're not going to lightly cast it aside. We have to prove to them, or at least to get the message across to them, how valuable these areas are. We need a bit of people power to give support to stop these sort of things going ahead.
We can't save the rivers that have been wrecked already, but at least we hope to stop more wrecking happening in future, because it's our stewardship. In this generation, we are the stewards of the rivers, and it's on our watch that this destruction is taking place.
It's the kids of the future, They're going to see rivers without water in them.
This is where all of us have to ask ourselves, OK, if I really love the river, what am I doing about it? And will I speak up for it? Will I actually do something that proves that I care about it?
Get involved today. To find out how you can help save the rivers in New South Wales, visit Rivers SOS website at www.riversos.com.